You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to your AMAC podcast, Better for America. My name is Rebecca Weber, and I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Today, you're going to hear from Andy Mangione. He is our Executive Vice President at AMAC Action. Now, AMAC Action is our advocacy arm of AMAC, and we do a tremendous amount of work in Washington. Andy Mangione works very closely with our group of over 300 AMAC advocates across the nation. These are AMAC delegates and chapter leaders that work in their community to help bring the message back to AMAC, because we take our marching orders from you, our AMAC member, and we go to work to make sure that your voice is heard in Washington. So Andy works very closely with those folks, and he works very closely with our elected representatives on the Hill in Washington, D.C. So today you will hear from Andy Mangione. Andy will be interviewing freshman Congresswoman Victoria Spartz. Now, she is out of Indiana's 5th Congressional District. Representative Spartz's story is so unique because she was born in Ukraine and she grew up under a socialist regime. So today you will hear about the struggles of living under a socialist system. We're going to hear the truth from Congresswoman Spartz and why she decided to leave the business world to become an American politician. Americans take for granted freedoms like having stocked shelves in supermarkets, right? Sometimes we don't recognize that it's an actual luxury to eat bananas and to be able to buy them pretty easily. So hearing from Victoria Spartz will certainly open up your eyes to the dangers of socialism and government control. Representative Spartz feels that we have the greatest republic that has ever existed, but we need to fight for our future and preserve our freedoms. AMAC will continue our fight to ensure that your liberties are protected and that your freedoms are protected. So I want to thank each and every listener. If you are an AMAC member, thank you for joining. For $16 a year, you automatically are subscribed to the AMAC magazine, which is a bi-monthly magazine. You gain access to great discounts like savings on car insurance and homeowners insurance, access to things like Social Security advisory services and Medicare services, and discounts when you travel, discounts when you stay at a hotel, motel. Let's see, what are some of the other great benefits that I know our members really enjoy? We have a great relationship with Pure Talk, a cellular phone company. They're offering a great discount to AMAC members. I believe they also are expanding your AMAC membership for a handful of years. So check that member benefit out. And we just have a slew of really great benefits. Check them out at amac.us. That's www.amac.us. And please download the AMAC News app. If you don't have our news app on your phone, you are missing out on getting the real news delivered right to your phone. You can set up notifications to receive text message alerts. The AMAC News app is our way of keeping you in the know. We deliver the truth. We send you real news. And so you don't get bombarded with ads. You're not overwhelmed with clickbait, none of that. This is another great AMAC member benefit. So please go to your app store on your phone, search for AMAC Inc., I believe is how it appears under the App Store, and go ahead and download that app. You'll get news delivered right to your phone, to your smartphone, and you'll be kept apprised of all of the great work that AMAC is doing on your behalf. So thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoy this wonderful interview with Andy Mangione and Congresswoman Victoria Spartz.
Welcome to this AMAC interview with Congresswoman Victoria Spartz. I'm Andy Mangione, Senior Vice President of AMAC Action. We appreciate you being with us. We have a wonderful guest in Congresswoman Victoria Spartz. Congresswoman, first of all, welcome to Congress. Okay, you're a freshman Congresswoman. You're serving in Indiana's 5th District. It's very exciting, but you have a unique story. You were born in one of the republics of the Soviet Union. Can you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Ukraine, but at that time it was Ukrainian Socialist Republic and part of the Soviet Union.
And so you have firsthand experience growing up under a socialist regime. Could you share some of those experiences? I have so many questions, but how much time did you spend under the socialist regime there? How old were you? Your formative years?
Oh, sure. And it's interesting. I was just driving once when I was a state senator to the State House, and I was thinking, I was born in 1978. Soviet Union fell apart in 91 when I was 13. So I very much remember, a lot of propaganda from Soviet Union and life under a socialist system. Then when Soviet Union fell apart, it was terrible. It was crimes, Wild West, very turbulent times. It's a matter of time when any socialistic system, runs out of money, but it's destruction when it does. It's very difficult to get back to democratic society. But you can see that former Soviet Republic, they've been independent for almost 30 years. They're still struggling to get back. And then I came to the United States after college. I met my husband on the train in Europe. He's from here. And we got married. And I came here and I'm like, oh my gosh, now we're building socialism. It's like full circle. I can tell you what is going to be next with my short life. So, so I very much remember what it was. And socialistic system is not fun. It's a system, kind of equality in misery. And it's not very sustainable. A lot of suppression of rights. You cannot go to church. You cannot express your First Amendment right. We didn't have First Amendment right. That's what we call it here. You cannot express your freedom of religion. I had to be baptized secretly by my grandmother, who was very religious, but you cannot openly pray or go anywhere. And if you say anything against your government, you can be in jail quickly. So I think it's very, very difficult life with a very limited resources. I always say, I would get sometimes a Coke, it was the Pepsi and bananas, and it was luxury to eat bananas. It was actually luxury. Very seldom we would do that.
So when you went shopping for food, the shelves weren't exactly stocked with all kinds of choices, were they? No,
it's a minimum amount. The system is so inefficient, so it cannot provide a lot of choices. It provides bare minimum for people to survive because, bread, milk, water, right? So so people don't go and take government down. So you got to give people a limited amount of food, limited amount of healthcare, limited amount, just a little bit, so people don't die right away. And then make sure you suppress enough so they don't complain, because when systems start rationalizing and being very inefficient, you cannot provide all of this abundance of choices. Only free markets can provide this choice and freedom. So this is just a natural, for that system to be very limited.
What was healthcare like under a socialist regime?
Well, it's always say free, right? But there is not free lunch is usually not very good lunch, right? So, you can come to the doctor, they will do little things, but ultimately nobody is fighting to save your life. There is not much innovation. So they will do bare minimum things. And, if you're a healthy person, you can survive under any system. But if you get sick and you have serious problems, that system doesn't care about really taking care of you. And that system doesn't care about actually treating you. And it's, getting worse and worse because it's generally become more and more bankrupt in a time. Unless you start paying some cash to your doctor, and that's what people would do. And, you will not get any services. So it's become a lot of this, dark economy, underground economy and corruptions, because generally you have to pay or you will get this very limited services that are not very good.
So not a whole lot of innovation in healthcare.
No. There is no incentive to innovate because ultimately there are perverse incentives. As long as, doctors are paid very little, so they don't have any incentives to, to go out of their way. And I mean, there are a lot of good doctors there too, but they don't have a good tools because the system, it just doesn't provide good tools.
Now, I know that you went to college at the University of Indiana, but you also did some schooling under a socialist regime. Can you compare and contrast the differences in learning and in education under a socialist regime and versus the United States?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that if you look at the Soviet system, they developed, actually to compete with the United States, they developed some strong curriculum in mathematics and science. It was a big race for the, so they actually had a very good, strong curriculum. You just couldn't apply after you get through your school because ultimately that doesn't pay very much. You can be the best scientist in physics and biochemistry but you're still going to be paid very little or probably less than someone who doesn't even have all these degrees. There is no incentive for you to be good, but the system and kind of forces to have some good knowledge. And in the time, actually, that's probably caused a lot of probably disruption because when people become more informed and knowledgeable, they start not liking the system. So I think it's actually had something to do when you educate people a little bit better, they can become better informed. They start go against the government a little bit more, But when I went to college, it was very interesting because I went to School of Economics after Soviet Union fell apart. So half of my academia still were pro-communist, pro-socialism, and half of my academia, Friedman, Hayek, Smith, free enterprise. So we had a lot of debates of ideas and deliberation. And it's actually very good for colleges to do that. I was surprised to see when I went to Indiana University and I taught a little bit that we didn't have that debate of ideas. I actually was introducing some economists to my accounting classes, so at least my students know about this economists. It's very tilted to a more government-controlled theories of economics, which was very surprising and almost like depressing for me. I was surprised to see I was a national trainer for some public accounting firms, and I was working at Big Four in Chicago, and we go to lunch, and a lot of graduates of top business school do not know who Milton Friedman is in Chicago from all of the places. I'm like, are you kidding me? Was very, very concerning for me and alarming that we don't even, teach. We are the strongest, economy of free enterprise, right? The strongest country, and we don't teach our children what might make our country the greatest. And that is really sad for me to see.
It is. And that's sadly something that's occurring more and more. You had mentioned at the onset of this interview that it was chaos when the Soviet Union fell apart. You mentioned you were 13 years old when that happened. Can you tell us a little bit what that experience was like?
Well, when any systems that falling apart, it creates anarchy, like lawlessness. So generally, then, criminals and bandits, they take advantage of the system. When government is broken, when government is not able to protect people's rights, these elements in society, they take advantage of it. So it was very controlled by bandits. Everyone was, taking, if you want to start business, you have to pay them a cut. If you don't do what you say, then you can get killed. So there were a lot of criminal activity was happening until at least somewhat they were able to get it under control. But even with any change in any systems that is kept happens abrupt, and really it's a very dangerous because there are always elements that will take advantage of it. So a lot of us fighting and shooting. It was a very, very bad times. 90s and the former Soviet Union, they were very unsafe times. So it was very difficult, for people to get through that. And that's why some of the people were yawning, oh my gosh, the place under socialism, we were not this, getting killed. We had some protections. And that's why still a lot of turbulence, and some people wanted like, oh my gosh, let's just at least go to safety, let's go back to safety. And it's very difficult to build democratic institutions when you destroy them and not have them. And it's kind of build them back and change the mentality of people to, to be willing to fight for freedom, to have that self-reliance and have that, ability to go and, be independent and willingness to do that, because it's much harder, right? It's much harder because you have to work harder. You have to worry about more things. And if you're not used to that and don't have that resiliency, it makes it more difficult. And that's why I see a lot of things we make our children in our American schools less resilient, less capable to survive, because world, it's a survival, right? You constantly have problems hitting you at all directions all your life. And you have to be resilient and capable and be able to learn all the time and move yourself forward and take that initiative to pursue your happiness. And if you don't teach children to do that, they come out of school and like, oh my gosh, I didn't think it was that difficult. And I see that happening a lot of here. And it's very, very alarming for me.
Yes. Well, thank you, Congresswoman. You met your husband on a train in Europe, and you ended up in the United States. I'm really love to hear this story.
Well, it's interesting. So my husband's father was in the military station in Germany. And so he met his mom in Germany. She's German born, and she's actually grew up under fascists in Germany. So she's a big believer in freedoms in the United States. And so my husband used to travel with his friend for a month in Europe and different countries. And I had some internships in Europe and travel, and we just happened to be on the same train. And we started dating when we were in college. And after college, he offered to get married, and I was young, adventurous, idealistic, and maybe, you have to be pretty adventurous to take a suitcase, come to the country without knowing one person. When I came to Chicago, I thought, and actually they lost my suitcase with address where to go in New York when I had my layover, and I'm coming, I have no even address. I don't know one person in the United States. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if he doesn't meet me, I am in trouble. I don't even know what to do, So, you have to be a little bit brave. And that was the time we didn't have cell phones or anything else. So it was kind of, but it's okay. Life, you cannot be afraid. And, and you have to take risks. And I learned about the United States from Alexis de Tocqueville, about the democracy in America, about all of these different things that, our founding fathers. So that was my thoughts about the country. And that's why, to tell you the truth, I got very upset what's happening in the country and awful at putting my money where my mouth is and started getting involved with politics, because I feel, if you don't like something, you have to get up and do something about it. If you don't do it, it gets worse.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Congresswoman. But that's a good segue into the next question. My next question was, okay, you're here. You went to Indiana University. You got into business. What kind of businesses did you get in before entering politics?
Well, to tell you the truth, when I came here, I had my fancy MBA from Ukraine, but no one cares about it, right? So I said, all these degrees are fancy. People are, what do you know? Well, I knew some English, but probably better now. So I'm like, where should I go? No one cares about it, especially, Noblesville, Indiana. So I'm like, okay, I need to get some kind of job with finances. So I went to the local bank and I said, I'll take any job you have. So they said, like, what about being a floating teller? I said, I'll take it. I didn't know. I had no idea what the job does, but to tell you the truth, it was like $8 an hour job. To tell you the truth, it was very good for me because I actually floated around a lot of branches around the county, got to know a lot of businesses, a lot of people, and it helped me to integrate and become American very quickly. And then bank was, had done the merger, they was bought out by a bigger bank. So you have people screaming at you all day and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? But it helped me to really learn quickly. And it also gave me some ideas because I started talking, okay, I am not going to, have a very good income at $8 an hour. I will not be able to provide for my family. So I started asking, well, do you have any career development? I have some degrees from Ukraine. What can I do? And people suggested me. So I'm like, what about becoming a CPA? CPAs are smart. I'm like, okay, I'll become one. And I got my master's, became CPA, got involved with public accounting during Sarbanes-Oxley time. And it was very difficult. I worked for Fortune 500 companies, and it was a very, very difficult experience, but it gave me a really broad perspective and knowledge in a lot of American businesses, a lot of knowledge that, that I wouldn't be able to obtain otherwise. And then my husband says, you got to be partner and single mom. You need to get back in town. I had 2 young daughters, so the level of travel and work was just very, very difficult with young children. So I pulled back and I said, okay, if I'm going to back in town, we'll start doing some businesses. So we'll start businesses, and we expanded, we started farming. We did some investment in real estate. I did some consulting and kind of got more involved with my businesses. And then I really realized how big the government is. When you start running your own businesses, you're like, OMG, local, state, federal, you just do compliance. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm highly educated, highly experienced person. And it's so difficult for me to navigate through all of the government bureaucracy. How in the world normal person can start a business? So that really made me think even more, realizing how difficult it was. Hard for larger corporations to deal with that, but they can get a CPAs like me for $500 an hour, attorneys for $1,000 an hour. You can afford it in a small business. So that was a challenge. And I felt like, no, I need to do something about it.
Congresswoman Spartz, you entered the political fray on the state level. All right. You had success in business. And you decided to, as you mentioned earlier, put your money where your mouth is, and you jumped into politics. How did that happen? Your first foray, I believe, was at the state level.
Right. Well, at first I got involved, to tell you the truth, with grassroots of our party, Republican Party, because I felt Republican Party needs to be better. I'm not saying we're a perfect party. We have lots of problems. But I felt it needs to do a better job serving the people. So if I saw that, I became involved. I became president of Republican Women. I became vice chairman of my local party, and it wasn't easy to become one. Okay, it was a fight. Okay, but I did become one. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this politics take over my life. It's actually very difficult to run, county parties. So I'm like, this takes a lot of my energy. And then I said, like, I need to pull back. I stay in central committee for the party, and then one of the senator retired, and I had a lot of people, oh, Victoria, we need someone like you, CPA, you need to run for Senate. We need to have people like that. So I ran in 7-way caucus. It was very difficult. I had to fight to win that one and became a state senator. And when I work on a lot of issues, because I do love working on policy, I do not like politics very much. I don't like all that side of politics at all. I'm like an accountant, CPA. I want to be behind the scenes. When I did work on policy, I realized that states subrogated enormous amount of rights to the federal government. And if we don't fix a lot of issues at the federal level, states cannot do anything about it. Like issue of healthcare, for example, it's all controlled and centralized at the federal level. So I got all upset about what's happening. And I said, okay, I need to run for Congress. I joined 15-way race last second, still got 40% of the vote, but it was very tough. And then I had a very tough general, but you have to make your case, you have to work hard. And I'm very honored that people in my district elected me to represent them.
That's wonderful. Did you enjoy any aspect about running for Congress? It had to be a wonderful experience, very challenging, no doubt, and you're constantly raising money. But what a thrill it had to be.
Well, I think it's very difficult, and it was a very difficult year to run with the pandemic, with people being so frustrated, a lot of violence, a lot of aggression, people would destroy signs and never send, terrible letters and packages. So it wasn't an easy way to run, but then you go to some places, and I went to polling locations, and we had issues in Monk County, and people were standing for 8 to 10 hours to vote for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it breaks your heart. People it's so important for them to do that. And you're saying like, okay, it's important for me to serve these people if they're willing to go. And some of us like older people, so, and you meet some people and they put so much faith in you and they feel that they're so important for them. So you have these moments like that, and people appreciate that you're willing to do it because it's not an easy task, and so you have good moments, but definitely it was extremely, extremely difficult year to run for Congress last year.
It's a grind. There's no doubt about it. So you've gone from the grassroots to the halls of Congress. Tell us, what will your primary focus be as a member of Congress?
Well, I always say, there are a few things that I really, really feel it's important to fix for us. It's a healthcare. If we get fully socialized healthcare, we're not going to have any, we'll become a socialistic country, because it's a very important thing for a lot of people. And, we need to provide good health care for seniors, make sure that our Medicare is not going to run out of money. And if we promise seniors, we're going to be able to provide it. We need to make sure that we have good health care as a government help, to high-risk individuals, high-risk schools. But we also need to make sure that everyone else has a choice. Consumer has choice of insurance, of doctors, of medication, and everything else. So I think healthcare is a big issue. Unfortunately, right now we're so far apart with my Democrat colleagues because they believe on single-payer healthcare, and it's unfortunate for me to say that. So I don't know how much, right now, since my Democrat colleagues control Congress, how much we're going to be able to do, but we'll try, maybe at least on some drug transparency issues. I try to find at least some narrow issues we can work on. Education is a huge problem. Higher ed is broken. I mean, it's, bankrupting a lot of young people, and it's really not delivering right results and outcomes. And I think that is a huge problem. We also have a very big difference of opinions on this issue, but I think we still need to work on it and make sure we have good, environment for small businesses to succeed. And I see opposite policies coming through current administration and through I'm on Education and Labor Committee. There are a few issues that I actually wasn't planning to work on Judiciary Committee, but few issues just came. I didn't plan to work on them, but they are a challenge. I'm on the Immigration Subcommittee. I just went to our southern border, and it is disturbing what is happening. It is a national crisis what is happening in our southern border. I went with Democrat colleagues, I went with Republicans, and we're going to be back this week today. I'm actually going to be back in DC. We have to have a serious conversation. We cannot have open borders, a lawless country. We allow criminals and terrorists, to control our border. I mean, this is awful. I'm also working on the antitrust subcommittee, and in an issue of First Amendment and big tech control. It's a very big issue. So we can see enormous distortion of power when you have a very strong monopolist controlling information and not very well informed electorate. So that is creating huge distortion, and it's very dangerous. And they can manipulate. They can actually, tell big companies, some other big companies what to do. They cannot even have any appeal processes, no recourse on any actions. They just do whatever they want. That is an enormous amount of power. So we'll try to work on that too. And that is just something, I didn't plan to work, but we need to. So we have a lot of work to do. Hopefully Congress can get to work. We have too much demagoguery and drama.
Without a doubt. Congresswoman, you bring a unique perspective to the United States Capitol. We wish you all the luck in the world in your endeavor. It's so wonderful to have members of Congress who know what it's like to meet a payroll, but your unique experience growing up in under a socialist regime gives you a wonderful perspective to tackle the issues that you just described. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate everything. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you sitting with us. We look forward to publishing this in the magazine, and we will definitely be in touch, Congresswoman Spartz. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I can tell you that we have the greatest republic that ever existed in the history of the world. So we need to fight for our future and for all of these people that died for our freedom. So it's a big fight, but it's important for people to remember it. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Well, I really did enjoy that interview with Victoria Spartz, Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, and Andy Mangione. I hope you all did too. I hope you enjoyed it. For more news, information, and podcasts, please go to our website at amac.us. Don't forget to download the AMAC News app, which you can find right on your smartphone. If you go to the App Store and you search AMAC, that's AMAC, you'll see a red icon. Download that app. There is no cost. You are not bombarded with ads, and you're going to get the real news delivered directly to your phone or your tablet or your computer. So go ahead and download that news app as soon as you can. And to all of you listening today, thank you for joining AMAC's podcast, Better for America. And we look forward to having you back with us again next time. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.